Hey guys, welcome to another session of Tips and Change. If you guys have subscribed and are watching this series, it is a series aimed for mid-game players pushing to the end game. But really, I wanted to touch upon, like little varying topics, from experienced Epic 7 players and, the top players, what they do and little tips that they have implemented in order for them to be more efficient in terms of their gearing. Like, how do they spot good gear? And maybe you're asking that question as well, because you can't potentially roll every single piece of gear that you think has potential and still have the gold to come out of it, still have the charms to, enhance. You may be lacking. So little changes or little understanding of like what do you want to invest in will actually, help with that deficit, the gold deficit or crafting material deficit or your charm deficit. You want to make better choices, and then that way you'll always be hopefully in the positive. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the first subject and something that you need to ingrain in your mind right now, because as this game is really focused on gearing and the RNG that comes through gearing, you want to be able to have your resources used to the highest potential, right? So this video subject we're going to be talking about today is gear scoring and when to ditch gear. When to ditch gear, very, very important. And I'm going to say this right off the bat that when I started the game, I played for like a year and a half and even two years pretty much. Until the I-90 meta actually was implemented into the game, I was really, really bad in terms of like gearing habits and stuff like that. If you're watching me on Twitch and you're a more experienced or veteran player, you know that to be the case. In fact, you've laughed at my gray gear or my green gear or my blue boots or something like that. So, but if you're a mid-game player, don't worry, I'm teaching you all the right stuff. So hopefully this will be informative. So first things first, we have to understand two common things that you'll probably read about and maybe you didn't care about, but you do need to care about it. If you come by my Twitch streams, I usually get people asking, how do you calculate gear score? Because I keep mentioning it, right? Gear score, that's a really good gear score, that's not really good gear score. How do you know a hero, a full build is really good? How do you know a build is actually good versus a build that is bad? Generally, an experienced player who has kind of like subconsciously memorized potential gear scoring, they'll be able to look at a hero and be like, oh my goodness, that hero is really good, or that hero is missing da 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 da. Not because of just stats that they've seen other people post on Discord or Reddit or whatever, but more of the time you can actually get a sense of, is that hero built on high gear scoring gear or is that low gear scoring gear? Before we keep continuing on this subject, we definitely need to figure out what the heck is gear score. Jagan, what the heck are you talking about? So I have a couple examples here, like for example like this one and this one. We'll use these two as example as a kind of like a visual representation of what I'm about to explain. So first things first, this video is not going to be focused on 90 gear. 90 gear is actually pretty easy to understand. Once you understand the min-max value of an 85 gear, 90 gear is a piece of cake. But 85 gear, this is fundamental right now as the game has set that the 85 gear is really the gear you want to hunt for, the gear you want to craft or start for end game gearing. 85 gear is the standard right now. We need to understand that there are limits in terms of the substat minimum and maximum roll. So if you hear the term gear scoring, gear score, what it's really talking about is a way to revert calculate minimum and maximum roll. So what we see here in the boot, we're not going to look at the sets, we're not going to look at the main stat, we're looking at the substats only. 8% on health, 8% on effectiveness, and 4% on crit rate. So to understand that all 85 gear is capped at a maximum of 8% health, 8% effectiveness, 8% effect resist, 8% defense. So those are our standards. Because they reach the highest number, every other stat is calculated with the objective of a maximum of 8. So that number 8 value becomes our standard. So in terms of crit rate, maximum roll you can get up to 5%, crit damage maximum up to 7%, speed is 4. Although I speed can roll 5, and I believe it is only on an epic 85 or greater. Actually, no, that's not true. I think it's on epic only. I've had a 78 roll a 5 speed before. But I made a tips and change video on my mentality when chasing speed gear, and in that you actually see a lot of what I'm about to talk about kind of seep out. So if you want to check out that video as well, definitely feel free to do that. But we talk more about speed gear and the speed substat itself. So to know the minimum and maximum values of each number is very, very important. So therefore, when we're calculating gear score, we're using the 8 as that golden standard. When we calculate gear score, let's say health is at 8, we multiply that 8% by 1, and that is equivalent to a gear score of 8. Okay, so try to get that ingrained in your mind as this workout, and this will really help you figure out whether or not a piece of gear is worth rolling. I'm probably gonna do a bit of crafting as well, just to get some real life examples. So again, effectiveness as well, it's at 8, so this is maxed, right? So what you would do at the end would be calculating the min and max gear score to see how high of a gear score you get. So a couple things again. Because now we have the standard of 8, how do you calculate crit rate, right? So you'll see this as well. People will say crit rate multiplied by 1.6. Now, where does that 1.6 come from? You take the maximum value 8, remember the golden rule. So maximum value of 8, and you divide it by the maximum of what crit rate can roll, which is 5. So the multiplier is a 1.6. And you do the same thing for crit damage, which is 1.14. So you take 8 divided by 7, and it's 1.14. Now, I myself, when I calculate my own gear score, like in my mind, I actually don't give my crit damage 1.14. I just calculate at a multiple of 1. To me, it's just easier to calculate, and for crit rate, I just calculate a 1.5. So my gear score ends up being a bit lower than what other people may tell you, but it works for me. It's fine. I usually think about it this way. Like if you guys watch Dragon Ball Z and Goku was wearing like the weighted clothing, so on the outside it looks about the same, right? So I'm using this as a metaphor for the gear scoring. On the outside it looks the same, but when he takes off the weighted clothes, he became so much better, right? So in my mind, if you lower your standards a bit, even though it's in reality actually higher, you'll look more OP, okay? So in terms of like, if you come on my streams and you see me calculate a gear score for 1.5 on crit rate and then 1 times for crit damage, I'm just saying that that's not actually how you do it. It is 1.6 for crit rate and then 1.14 for crit damage, but that's getting to the nitty gritty. And like I said, speed really should not be multiplied or divided by 5 because it's such a rarity to get a 5 speed. It is divided by 4, so speed then is at a multiplier of times 2. Right, so maximum 4 speed, you're hitting that golden number of 8, so it's a multiple score of times 2. So what does that mean? So that means that when you craft an epic gear, I don't think I have any epic gear that is not rolled. Oh, here, let me just roll one again. I'm missing helmets. I want some helmet upgrades, so let me do this. Okay, hopefully we get an epic gear here for showcase. Perfect. Actually, this is really good. This one's a good example. So this one here, this epic gear, remember, golden value of 8, right? So in terms of the health, maximum could be 8, attack, maximum could be 8, defense, maximum could be 8, crit damage is at max. So this is a really good example to start with. Ideally, what you're looking for when you're rolling gear to plus 15, the maximum amount of gear score you can get on an 85 is 72. Because again, assuming that you have a gear scoring of 8 on the substat here, as you see, if it was 8, 8, 8, 8 or whatever, and then you rolled 5 times, if it's an epic gear, you can roll 5 substats in there. That would be a total of 72. So your benchmark or your maximum gear score ends up being 72. So instead of like reverse calculating, what did I like min and max roll that, you just multiply what you get in terms of your gear and the substats after you enhance, and you multiply it with those multipliers, and then you get your answer in terms of like, is this high gear scoring? So I did my calculation off the recording before I did this, based on the actual calculation, the standard calculation. This is a gear score of, I think, 54.84. So out of 72, that's actually very low. And I do know it's low because as I was rolling it, I was experiencing low rolls. So I actually low rolled speed twice, I believe, on this. And then the 22 defense was actually the maybe the decent part, but I did low roll speed twice. So because it's speed and it's multiple of 2, it really hurt my gear scoring. So here, let me do a preview. I think it's like one of these ones. Yeah, so, oh wait, what? Okay, so I rolled speed 3 times based on this. So it's very, very low. It's very, very low. Okay, so that's what I mean. So again, this video is not focusing on 90 gear scoring, because 90 gear scoring technically, I mean, some people, what they do for 90 gear score is that they take the same multiplier and then apply it to a 90 standard. But technically 90 gear scoring should technically be in its own standard, that modified standard. So instead of a 72, it should be 81, but technically a bit more, because we'll get into that maybe in a future video. But regardless, that's how you know. That's how you know whether or not a piece of gear is actually legitly good. Let me see. I have one that is an I-90 boot that is it's actually high gear scoring, but because it's 90, it's gonna look a bit off. Actually, you know what? No, SSB has a ring that's actually really good. Even before I hit the 90, it started off really good. I remember that stream very well. This defense main, I remember that stream very well. It was like, you know, like max rolling like health, max rolling like attack or whatever. It was actually pretty good. In terms of like the overall lost gear score on this, I think it was like very minimum, but this was like one of the higher pieces. Now when we're talking about the maximum of getting a 72 gear score, so 72 out of 72, that's very, 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 very unlikely. What you're gonna be realistically looking at is like high 60s. High 60s are generally really good. And we're talking about 85, we're not talking about 90. 85 gear, so high 60s at the end of it is already really good. And like I said, on that helmet that I showed, that plus 15 helmet was 54 only. For an epic gear is very low. So now with that gear score in mind, something may have already occurred to your head, is that when I was crafting the helmets, epic gear, this is why epic gear right now is so important. Heroic gear, unless you're chasing pure speed, and I'm talking about like if you want to push to the top of the top in terms of stats, unless you're chasing pure speed gear, or perhaps DPS gear or DPS that don't need any sort of bulk, anything else or extra, then potentially you roll heroic. So for example, on a chest piece, you can only roll for a pure DPS. I'm talking about purebred DPS, like maybe like an Arbiter Villager or something, like a speed one, a speed set one. You're only looking for 3 substats. You're looking for crit rate, crit damage, and speed. Since you cannot roll flat attack, you can't roll percent attack in it. So those are the only 3 you're looking for. So in certain cases, rolling heroic can make sense. But like I said, usually if it's like full speed, you roll the heck out of it, and you pray that you get the good speed rolls, ideally still on a speed set, but you know, to each their own there. But again, watch that video in terms of my mentality when rolling for speed gear. I think it will really help. But regardless, you may have noticed, obviously with the gear scoring in mind, and min and max roll in mind, you really want to start rolling epic gear only, right? So in terms of if we're talking about that 72 gear score maximum on a heroic gear, you're always going to be missing, right? Because you're plus 12, you're missing a full roll completely. And then of course, I mean, heroic gear in and of itself has a lot of issues. Like you don't know what 4th stat you're gonna roll, so you're banking on a lot of RNG. So in terms of resources, it may not be the best thing to ever invest in. Like I said, conditional, and if you're like a mid-game player and you're still trying to fill out your roster, you can do it. But even at this point, because of the I-90 meta and how expensive it is to 90 gear, I even don't recommend that. I actually just recommend you put your head down, slow grind through it, get actual good gear, and then make your name in PvP or wherever you want to experience. And also don't spread yourself too thin. I mean, one of the things about if you guys watch my high-end player account reviews, one of the common threads, I would say most common threads, unless they're like Omega Whale, like talking about thousands of dollars or all the packs gone every month, unless they're Omega Whale, the common thread that you see is that very good players don't have a huge roster built. Alright? Like, we're talking about players that play from the beginning, but maybe they have 20 heroes built, but they're built really well. So like if those kind of like numbers or that kind of imagery gives you a sense of what are the possibilities, I'm just saying don't spread yourself too thin, just slow grind it. I did again, for players who watch me on the usual and you've grown with me since the beginning, you would have seen my account grow in a healthier sense. I'm not building more heroes that are garbage now. I'm building more heroes that are better or like really well geared. But my roster expansion is just not as quick as before. But before I would put on like any purple gear, I'm just like, oh, this is my build, da da da, this is my build, da da da, but they all look like garbage. And I know that now, going back. So regardless, if you're rolling a heroic gear, it's always going to be missing one gear skill, so you're always going to be missing potential. I mean, I see builds here. I'm gonna show some builds. I have heroic gear on, I won't lie, and obviously it's going to be missing some substats. So like FCC, I recently rebuilt. This is two heroic gear, all right? So that's not really good already, all right? So like if I was looking at this 2 heroic gear, I'm already missing a total of, from an 85 perspective, a total of 16 gear score, which means a potential of 16% of whatever stat. That's huge. That's very big. 16% loss of defense, 16% loss of HP is a huge deal. So it may look minimum and you might think that, oh, 90 gear was helping me bridge the gap between the top players. It's not. Top players are looking at only purely like, you know, as much epic gear as possible. I'm here to show my blue crow as well. So this is a full red gear blue crow. In terms of substats, obviously, like I said, to get the 72 out of 72 gear score is very near impossible. This one, I would say I would rate this pretty high. I'm also missing stats in terms of like that percent attack could be more defense. But in terms of like actual gear roll, this crow is pretty high. It is at no imprint. All right. So in terms of like that's what you really need. You want to invest in epic gear more so. So let's roll a couple gears. So like with the understanding of gear scoring in mind, minimum maximum gear, how do you know when to toss a piece of gear? In terms of red gear, when it rolls, like let's roll this one a bit. I think this one has some potential. It's got like, you know, kind of bruisery stats. So this rolled max crit damage, so that's a really good start. So remember, gear scoring again, multiplying it for crit damage, 1.14. Although, like I said, I have the Goku thing, so I gotta call it the Goku syndrome, right? The Goku syndrome, where I lower my standards, so I handicap myself mentally, but I'm actually more OP than I am. Let's roll this again. So okay, so that one low rolled, right? So we started at a 6% defense, I think, and we rolled 4. So that one low rolled, but because the high crit damage and we're only at +6 right now, this is so far so good. I'm gonna roll this to a +9. I'm gonna get some charms. This is not a flex. I'm actually literally doing this, but you notice my conquest points is quite a bit. All right. Now the only reason why I do this is because, again, I don't invest in gear that I think is crappy. So if you don't invest in gear that is crappy, you save on gold, you save on charms, and overall you just feel happier about your account. But of course, I understand that there is a time crunch a lot. A lot of the players, you know, when they get a new hero, they want to build them up to the maximum. Ooh, that's actually pretty good. So right there, we had a 7% health start, but we got a 8% health. So in terms of gear score, right now, how it looks at a +9, this is, so it's 15 and then 10, so that's 25. And then crit damage, let's use the Goku syndrome. Crit damage right now is at 14, so I'm not going to multiply it by 1.14. So what was that, 20, yeah, so 25, and then 30, 39, and then +4% attack. So about 40, my math is bad. On the fly, it's really bad. 43, okay, if I did the calculation wrong, just ignore me. I'm still teaching right stuff, ignore the numbers. But it's pretty high. So in terms of a gear score, if you were rolling, let's say, a heroic piece of gear, I'm gonna do this, all right? I think for content, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna find something that may be okay to roll. Notice my tone and voice. Okay, so like this is okay. So this is pretty bad. So right away, like I mean, so for some players, maybe this used to be like this might look good to you. But because it already is missing 3% health, 3% attack, in terms of a non-rolled gear, you're already missing a total of 6 gear score out of 72, right? And remember, heroic don't even get 72. It's 72 minus 8. So 64. So already missing 6 out of that 64. So potentially you already know that this is going to be a maximum gear score of 58. And that's assuming if you roll high. Actually, no, your crit rate is actually missing 1 too. So it's even lower than that. But I'm gonna roll this to a +3. And generally, most people are saying that, you know, depending on the gear, if it's heroic, sometimes you toss it early. But depending on the gear, at a +9, that's when you make or break that piece of gear. So that rolled a 7% attack, which is pretty high, but I'm not gonna roll this anymore because I already know the potential. This is really bad. But in terms of a heroic gear, if you +9, generally what you want to keep is something above 35 gear score. Above 35 gear score. Now, in terms of the mix and match of the substat, hopefully you already have enough common sense. Like you wouldn't roll like, you know, attack percent, crit rate, and an effect resistance. Like you wouldn't roll that at all, hopefully. If you don't know why, maybe I'll make a video on that specifically on harmonization of substats. So this one I would roll usually because it's on speed set and has a 4 starting speed. And like I said previously, that, you know, I would roll it because I would chase the speed myself. So for this immunity helmet, like I tried to chase it. It didn't work out, so I'm tossing that. So I'm gonna toss this in here instead of a charm, and we didn't get it. So in terms of the gear itself, this is dead to me. All right, so that has nothing to do with the gear score. But like I said, if you're going to a +9 and you want the best of the best, ideally you want anything above 39. Actually, it's actually pretty easy to calculate too, because then you'll know that at a +9 gear, you're having a 24% maximum gear score at +0, and then you want to +3 more 8s into it, right? So it's 24 out of 24. So you know that a heroic gear, if you're going for +9 and you want to know what the max is, the maximum gear score is 48. I'd say 39, 38, 39 is very, very generous already, because you're already missing 10 gear score on a heroic. That's pretty bad. So most of the time, again, if you're pushing the top top gear, you wouldn't necessarily roll any heroic at all, like ideally. But like I said, there's like the minimum cases, like you need to fill out gear. It is an upgrade for you at that time. I mean, that is understandable. I mean, everybody has to start somewhere, and you do kind of need gear in order to get more gear, you know what I mean? So in terms of this one, let's keep rolling it. All right, so again, like I said, on a gear score of a heroic, because it starts at an 8, so it's 32 base, and then you can roll 3 into +9. Technically you should be looking at a maximum of 56 at the +9 itself. We said that this is 41 or whatever. I'm gonna roll this to the max here, or at least get to the +12. Usually at the point of you investing into a +12, you're gonna be +15 anyway. The reason is because the sunk cost fallacy, but it actually does kind of make sense. You're praying that if you low roll on a +12, or you get a useless stat on a +12, you're hoping for the last roll to be a max roll and on something good. I mean, you gotta pray about it, man. Like, whoa. Well, that's spicy, man. Okay, so this is okay. So far this is pretty good. If because substat reroll is in, that's maximum crit damage that we've done this on display, and you guys hear my genuine reactions. So you want to you definitely want to continue this one. It's got usable stats. It's a bruiser piece for sure. I don't know, maybe that attack remains, or that attack gets substat out to crit rate, potentially crit rate and speed hold the highest value in terms of the base substat reroll. Let me get a couple. Let's max it out. You guys get to see this live on live recording here. as a demonstration of that 72. Remember, we're going for that sweet 72 here. That's the maximum score. Actually, I'm gonna feed these into. Okay, so they act kind of like a small charm. So I'm gonna basically try to min-max the amount of charms that I'm using. So I usually don't try, you know, these are little things, but I usually don't try to overcap or overshoot my charms. If it's something like very minimum, I feel charms are so important, especially when you're trying to finish some Pogger's gear. So this one we'll definitely get, unless we get a greater experience. Oh, I might be able to get it straight from this, so I'm just gonna go for this. Oh, low roll defense. So the crit damage is very nice though. So if I'm looking for pretty high crit damage to kind of carry maybe loss of crit damage on other gear, this piece would be good for that. It did low roll defense twice. The health was max and 3. So yeah. So let's do the calculation again, right? So remember, 72 gear score because it's a heroic, that golden 8 number. So we got a 15 and then plus 21. I'm doing my Goku thing, and then plus 14 and then plus 4. So that's 54. Okay, so it seems about the same, but the crit damage, if we actually take the actual calculation of it, it is 21 multiplied by 1.14, so we get 2394 out of it. If you want to round up, again, I want to do the Goku thing again, I'm gonna round down to maybe 23, so I get a bit more. 56 gear score ends up being pretty low, and as you saw, like, gear score directly correlates with how we rolled this on the fly. It's just that usually, again, people use the term gear scoring or use gear score technique to be able to deduce how many rolls we're missing in terms of, you know, if that attack had started at an 8 base, this would actually still be very good. This would actually still be a very good piece of gear. Like I said, if you're hovering above the above 60s, like 61, 62 out of 72, it's very good already. You'll find it very hard to get to the 72. I don't think I've ever seen a piece of gear that is rated 72 out of 72. Not on anybody's high-end account, but we've gotten really close. And like I said, if each piece of gear add up to that hero's overall stats, it does make a big difference, right? It does make a big difference. If you think about all 6 pieces of gear giving you those numbers, like 72, you're gonna have an amazing hero build. Almost unbelievable, actually. So let me just double check this here. I want to see. Yeah, 24, 18, 18. I mean, this is acceptable. That attack is definitely going out, either speed or crit rate for sure. I might actually use this right away. I might have a hero that could use this right away, man. I'm pretty excited about that. But anyways, I don't think I missed anything in terms of this subject, in terms of the 85 gear scoring and what it looks like to have good gear or when you should toss it. Again, if you follow those things, like I said, revert calculate how much gear score you're missing from heroic gear if you're planning to roll it. But otherwise, if you roll epic, also keep that in mind. You can roll some pretty bad epics. I mean, look, I actually kept this helmet. I can finally unlock it and get rid of it. I kept this helmet for content as an example of what bad roll looks like. Hold on, so this one. So you can see this. I'm on the recent, and this helmet is very nested in now. I've been keeping this for a long time. Like, I asked this as a joke. I'm like, what substat did it roll? Because you know that minimally attack has to roll minimally 4, and so minimally it can start at 4. So how can it roll 5? No. So that can't be it. And defense, actually, that's almost as low as it gets. That's actually pretty bad as well. It rolled speed. The answer is speed. It started at a 2 speed, it rolled 1 speed, so we got the 3 speed. So this is completely dead. You know that this is. I was chasing speed on this one anyway because of the low gear scoring, and like I said, I apply my own standards into my own account. So if this gear would happen on a speed set with speed, I roll it only for the speed. It did roll speed. It just rolled garbage. So it's completely out. The very last topic I want to talk about again right here for this is the well, if you calculate gear score, Jagan, how do you calculate flat health? That's a very good question. I know you didn't ask that question, but that's a very good question anyway. We're gonna go with Crow. Very quick. So flat stats is you can't really calculate flat stat in terms of the gear score. On a different hero, flat stats offer different values, and I mean technically the same with percent, but that's generally how the top players have kind of looked at flat stats. I'll use the Remnant Violet as an example because he has a lot of flat stats. So Remnant Violet has pretty decent defense compared to Scorpio Thief. We'll use Remnant Violet and Green Violet as an example here. So as you see, the ring, I have 119 flat defense, which is really good. It's actually really good for him. His base defense is at 522, so that's the same as with RB and stuff like that. But so percent defense actually isn't a terrible thing to have on them if you're chasing that, of course. But the flat often weighs very, very high as well, so definitely don't overlook that, especially on a lower base, right? Because basically what's going to happen for your gear score is that you're going to use the flat and you're going to compare it to whatever the hero's base stat is. So in terms of like if it's a base HP, base defense, so for example, this one is we're just looking at the flat stat there. That is equivalent to 22% of Remnant Violet's defense. 22% of his defense, so very, very high again. But if we take that same thing and we use Green Violet as an example, he's only at 473 base defense, so then the flat defense 119 doesn't scale on this Green Violet. So for example, the percent defense then would offer a lower value than Remnant Violets. So let me just, like, I can't really build them because they don't have the exact same stats, but it would actually lower the value. So in terms of this ring itself, because it has both, percent defense will gain lower value, lower return, but the flat will gain higher return, right? So the flat here on Green Violet's base defense is actually 25%, so only 3% more. And of course you say that, well, that still is lower than the 28, but I'm talking about in terms of value. The flat stat, let's say if it was a ring with just a flat stat, it does gain back more value. That has been a long video. Hopefully that has been helpful for you guys. So you know, definitely consider subscribing to the channel if these videos are helpful. And this video will be very important in the near future as well. So if you get the philosophy and the mechanics down in your mind from this video, it will really help for like the next couple videos I have in mind, which I'll be talking about, like conversion gems, specifically what to craft, like which side of gear to craft, best practices there, and also just the 90 gear and then substat gear conversion. So understanding the min-max value and how to calculate gear score right now is going to be very helpful for that. Anyways, if you guys have any comments or concerns, please let me know in the comments down below in the YouTube video. And if you guys have any suggestions on things that you want me to cover in this tips and change series, definitely feel free to recommend. I definitely read all the comments. So anyway, this has been a long one. I'm gonna end this here. If you guys have Discord, check out the Discord server. Follow me on Twitter, subscribe to YouTube if you haven't. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next Tips and Change.